So good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi. Today, I'm here to announce that our government has made the decision to list the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity under the Criminal Code. This action sends a strong message that Canada will use all of the tools at its disposal to combat the terrorist entity of the IRGC. The Iranian regime has consistently displayed disregard for human rights, both inside and outside of Iran, as well as a willingness to destabilize the international rules-based order. Our government will ensure that there is no immunity for Iran's unlawful actions and its support of terrorism. La décision d'inscrire le corps des gardiens de la révolution islamique sur la liste des entités terroristes en vertu du Code criminel envoie un message clair. Le Canada utilisera tous les outils à sa disposition pour lutter contre les activités terroristes du CJRI. Le régime iranien a toujours affiché un mépris total pour les droits de la personne, tant à l'intérieur qu'à l'extérieur de l'Iran, ainsi qu'une volonté de déstabiliser l'ordre international fondé sur des règles. L'inscription s'inscrit dans le cadre des efforts plus vastes que nous déployons pour veiller à ce qu'il n'y ait pas d'impunité pour les actions illégales de l'Iran et le soutien qu'il apporte au terrorisme. Canada has already some of the strongest measures in the world against the Iranian regime. That includes the listing of several terrorist entities such as Hezbollah, Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Taliban that have benefited from the IRGC's support in the past and continue to do so, and that have helped advance Iran's interests in foreign policy. We also designated the Islamic Republic of Iran as a regime that has engaged in terrorism and systematic or gross human rights violations. As a result of this designation, under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, thousands of senior Iranian government officials, including top IRGC members, are inadmissible to Canada. In addition to being banned from entering the country, current and former senior Iranian government officials who are in Canada may be investigated and removed. Les agences de renseignement et d'application de la loi du Canada travaillent constamment afin d'appliquer notre régime de sanctions et de s'assurer que quiconque au Canada soutient une activité terroriste, ici ou ailleurs dans le monde, en soit tenu responsable. Grâce à l'ajout du CJRI à la liste d'organisations terroristes, nos agences d'application de la loi bénéficieront d'un outil additionnel pour les aider à faciliter le dépôt d'accusations de terrorisme contre ceux qui commettent ou qui soutiennent le terrorisme. Our government will always promote human rights and take action against those seeking to disrupt our way of life here in Canada or around the world. With that, I thank you, and now I'll turn it over to my colleague, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Mélanie Joly. Mel?
Right. Merci, Dom. Hi, everybody. We've been saying for years now to Canadians, don't go to Iran. With this decision today, there is a heightened risk of arbitrary detention in Iran. So my message is clear. For those who are in Iran right now, it's time to come back home. And for those who are planning to go to Iran, don't go. We don't have an embassy in Iran. We've cut diplomatic ties for years now, and therefore, we won't be able to provide the consular expertise that would be required. Maintenant, nous avons dit depuis des années de ne pas aller en Iran. Avec la décision d'aujourd'hui, il y a un risque beaucoup plus élevé de détention arbitraire pour les Canadiens qui iraient en Iran. Alors, pour tous ceux et celles qui sont en Iran au moment où on se parle, c'est le temps de retourner à la maison. Et pour ceux et celles qui pensent aller en Iran, n'y allez pas. Nous n'avons pas d'ambassade en Iran. Nous avons fait en sorte de briser nos relations diplomatiques avec l'Iran il y a maintenant plusieurs années, et donc nous ne serons pas en mesure d'offrir les services consulaires dans les circonstances. Merci.
Arif?
Thank you. I just want to add that the consequences of a listing under the criminal code under Section 83 are significant. Most significant is the aspect of financial transactions or monetary support for listed terrorist entities. So this is important to underscore. It relates to banking transactions, financial transactions of various sorts. But what is also important to underscore is that there needs to be what's called an elevated mens rea requirement. So that's an elevated criminal intent. People would need to be sending money that they would be knowing where it is going and intending that it be used for the support of the terrorist activity in question. So it's important for Canadians to understand the consequences of this listing. And I'd now like to turn it over to one of our very strong colleagues, Ehsassi.
Thank you, Minister Virani. I think today is a very significant day. Today, we finally recognize the IRGC for what it is. It's an entity that has suffocated, bludgeoned Iranians at home, and is also responsible for fomenting instability throughout the world. So I wanted to express my gratitude to Minister LeBlanc for having put in a robust process where he listened to a lot of voices in the Iranian-Canadian community, the voices of experts, the voices of numerous stakeholders, the voices of numerous members of Parliament here today. So thank you, Minister LeBlanc, for having done it in such a robust fashion. Also wanted to thank Minister Joly for having made it possible, and for Minister Virani and the Department of Justice for having focused on this and making sure that we're doing this in a responsible fashion. Now we will take questions.
Ça a pris autant de temps. Ça fait des années que votre gouvernement subissait des pressions pour faire ce que vous nous annoncez aujourd'hui. Pourquoi maintenant? Pourquoi pas avant?
La décision d'inscrire une organisation sur la liste d'entités terroristes ne se fait pas à cause de pression politique. C'est une décision basée sur le droit. C'est un niveau de renseignement qui est prescrit par le Code criminel du Canada. Le gouvernement prend des conseils, que ce soit de l'Agence du service de renseignement de sécurité, la GRC, nos partenaires à l'international, et c'est une décision délibérée que prend le Conseil des ministres basée sur les meilleurs renseignements. C'est une évaluation qui se fait littéralement tous les mois. David Vigneault et d'autres collègues me parlent d'une réunion mensuelle où ils regardent certaines entités, ils considèrent des renseignements la preuve pour en ajouter d'autres. Alors, c'est un processus délibéré et le gouvernement, le Conseil des ministres a décidé maintenant que c'était le moment d'inscrire cette entité terroriste de l'Iran sur la liste.
What changed?
So, the decision to list an organization under Canada's criminal code as a terrorist entity isn't made because of comments on Twitter or a question period. It's made based on the advice of our security services. It's made based on foreign policy considerations that perhaps my colleague could address. It's a deliberative process. It's a threshold that has to be met under the Criminal Code of Canada. The Cabinet considers, obviously, the advice of our security agencies, CSIS and the RCMP. I'm told that there's literally a monthly review by the security agencies of different entities around the world and whether or not the threshold has been met and whether or not they're in a position to recommend to the government the listing under the Criminal Code. So the Government of Canada has concluded after a deliberative process based on very, very strong and compelling evidence that the Cabinet received, that now is the time to list the IRGC as a criminal terrorist entity. Peut-être Mélanie peut ajouter quelque chose.
To add to what Dominic just said, from the moment we get that advice also, and that the Minister of Public Safety gets that advice, I do my work on the foreign policy side. And over the past weeks, I've been in close contact with all our G7 partners, also partners in the region, to make sure that we would be able to get their feedback, advise them, and make sure that ultimately, as we're using all the different tools in our toolbox, that this would be an important step. And so that's why we did the work.
Was there pressure from the U.S. to do more on this file?
There's never been any pressure per se. What I can tell you, though, is I had numerous conversations with my American counterpart on this, and as many diplomatic conversations, they will remain private.
J'aimerais ça en profiter pour vous entendre là-dessus. Ne pas atteindre la cible du 2 %, est-ce que vous trouvez que ça nuit à nos relations avec nos alliés?
Mais premièrement, on a augmenté massivement le budget de la Défense. Le ministre Bill Blair, ministre de la Défense, a annoncé récemment une nouvelle politique de défense qui met l'accent sur la protection du Canada dans le Grand Nord, dans l'Arctique, et qui nous amène à 1,76 % du PIB. Maintenant, je suis convaincue que nous allons atteindre cet objectif de 2 % du PIB. Pourquoi? Parce que dans cette politique nationale de défense, on a également mentionné qu'il nous fallait nous procurer de nouvel équipement militaire, incluant des sous-marins. Et je suis convaincue qu'avec ces nouveaux achats, nous allons être en mesure d'atteindre cet objectif. On comprend l'objectif de l'OTAN, on comprend l'objectif de nos alliés, mais on le fait avant tout et pour les Canadiens et pour nous.
Êtes-vous en mesure de nous dire à quel moment vous allez atteindre l'objectif de 2 %?
J'aurai l'occasion de rencontrer le secrétaire général de l'OTAN un peu plus tard aujourd'hui, le premier ministre également. Nous allons à Washington dans 3 semaines au sommet de l'OTAN et nous voulons que ce sommet soit un succès pour l'OTAN, pour nos alliés, certainement pour l'Ukraine, mais pour nous aussi.
Are there any exemptions for people who had to join the IRGC because they were as part of their mandatory service and who perhaps fled and came to Canada? That's something that the government said in the past they were concerned about.
And we remain concerned about it, and that's why, as Dominic mentioned at the outset, we've been very careful and measured in terms of our approach. It's a complex situation, particularly in a country as diverse as ours, when you have diaspora communities that come from all corners of the world. Given that situation, what we did is we reflected on the situation. What I would underscore to address your particular question is that the element of financial support of a now listed terrorist entity requires an element of intention that is elevated. The intention needs to be that people understand and know where their funds are going to, and that they intend that they be used for the advancing of the terrorist activities' interests. If an individual was conscripted at one point in time and no longer serves with the IRGC, that would affect the analysis and inform the analysis. If the person who is sending the money does not know what it is going to be used for and is in fact kept in the dark about that information, that would also affect the analysis. It is not for me as Attorney General to weigh into the specific niceties of a given potential prosecution, but I have a lot of confidence in our law enforcement, our Crown prosecutors, and in our judges in doing an evaluation on a case-by-case basis. Merci.
Senior officials may be investigated now that this has been listed. What kind of evidence will go into when that turns into will be investigated, and how many senior officials do you think this will impact here in Canada?
So you'll understand that we're not going to speculate on individual cases or what evidence or information either the intelligence services or the RCMP use. The fact that the government has now added this very significant tool to the toolbox in terms of combating global terrorism and the role of the IRGC, including their activities in Canada, I have every confidence that CSIS and the RCMP follow the evidence, do their work, and work with prosecution services to make those decisions. But we're not going to speculate on how many particular cases are being investigated or the kind of persons that our intelligence services or police are looking at. But I know from numerous conversations with both the RCMP and CSIS that they're very much seized of this issue and that they see this also as a significant step forward in their ability to protect Canadians.
its assets by telegraphing this announcement.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Are you concerned that the regime may have time, given the delay, to pull its assets from Canada, financial, otherwise?
Listen, we severed ties with diplomatic ties with Iran years ago, and they were already listed as a state sponsor of terrorism. So therefore, we don't have any diplomatic ties. We have no personnel. They don't have any personnel. We are represented. Our protecting power in Iran is Italy, and their own protective power here is Switzerland. Thank you. Thank you.